it's interesting because you do have an established preference towards gifting or spending money on experiences instead of products, but we just have in our industry, it's really just an awareness challenge of just saying this is available as an option. You already know that you would prefer an experience, but most customers don't know, okay, what do I do with that? Where do I gift somebody an experience through? How does it work? All these things.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special spotlight edition of Travel Trends. This is your host, Dan Christian, and I'm excited to have a conversation today on the power and future of gifting experiences over things. I'm joined by the founder and CEO of Spur Experiences, Cody Sudmeier, and his company was built with this very powerful idea in mind, that experiences create more value, more connection, and more meaning than things ever can. And as we started 2026, I have been very focused, as our listeners know, that this is the year of transformational travel, given Joe Pine's landmark book, The Experience Economy, was published more than 25 years ago. And not only are we very much in the experience economy, we are now in this new world where people are prioritizing transformational travel experiences. And the reality is that people aren't just traveling to go somewhere anymore. They're traveling to feel something, to connect, and to create memories that actually change them. And that same shift is showing up in how people gift, celebrate milestones, and even how companies reward their teams. I know that's the way we approach things at Travel Trends. We're always focused on having great experiences together as a team, and those are always the incentives I want to reward our team with, because those are the ones I value the most. So in today's Spotlight episode, Cody and I dig into why experiences resonate so deeply compared to traditional gifts, especially wedding gifts, which I talk in detail about from my experience, and what actually makes an experience emotionally meaningful, and how different generations think about memories versus possessions. We talk about the types of experiences that have a lasting impact and why shared moments often matter more. We also break down how experience gifting is evolving in some very practical ways, from the instant booking experience for wedding registries to everyday consumer gifting and even corporate rewards. We explore how personalization and technology help match people with the right experiences, and how removing friction around scheduling and redemption, something that frustrates me a great deal in the loyalty space, makes gifting moments easier than ever. So if you're interested in where travel, gifting, and human connection are headed, and why experiences are quickly becoming the default over things, then this conversation is for you. And you can find out more information at spurexperiences.com as we have this conversation with Cody. But Cody, let's bring you in. Welcome to the Travel Trends Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, it's so great to be here today. I'm so excited to talk about travel and just kind of what our little slice of that world is.
For sure. And I think people got a good idea from that introduction about Spur Experiences and the conversation that we're going to have today. But I think that one of the things I would love to start off with, first of all, I'm keen for everyone to know where you are in the world, and tell us a little bit about your background before you started Spur Experiences.
So I live, and the company is headquartered in Denver, Colorado. So I'm right downtown. I spend a lot of time in the mountains, though. Love to ski, love to get up and hike and do that kind of thing in the summer times. Yeah, and for me, I I've been an entrepreneur now for about 20 years. My origin story is kind of funny. I Out of college, I did consulting for a big firm for about 4 years, and about 4 years out, I was passed up for promotion, and just sometime went home, and probably somewhere in a bottle of Jack Daniels, I found the courage to go back to work the next day and tell them I'm leaving. And it was my Jerry Maguire moment where I was like, I'm taking the goldfish and I'm getting out of here. And I started my first company back then, which was a consulting firm. Co-founded it with the one person in the office that decided to walk out with me, and did that for about 10 years. Built that to about 50 consultants. So it was pretty successful. It just got to a point where I was needing something that was a more interesting and more compelling industry to be involved with. And so got out of very corporate America telecom consulting, and got into this much more fun industry that touches on travel.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight where you're located, because I've got a lot of great friends that live in Colorado, and clearly it's one of the places that if you're into travel, adventure, the outdoors, it's one of the most incredible places in the world to be based. I mean, you've got such access to incredible mountains and geography from Denver. So there's a clear connection between where you are and what you decided to do, being inspired by that beautiful natural scenery, but also the fact that you had this corporate background before, which I always find interesting about an entrepreneur, that you had the consulting experience, because consulting experience is so highly relevant to be able to create a successful company. You've been advising other companies, and especially as a young executive, you're often advising companies that are much larger than companies you've ever worked on before. And then you went out and created your own firm. And as people heard in the introduction, you've been running Spur Experiences now for over 12 years. You started it way back in February 2014. But so tell everyone a little bit about the origin story of Spur Experiences. So after you were, running Agility Solutions, tell us a little bit what actually brought on the idea of creating Spur Experiences.
So when we first launched, we were exclusively a wedding registry for experiences. So it was just very narrowly focused on this niche of weddings. And the way that came about was I think by the time you get to like your, I don't know, young or mid 30s, you've been to enough weddings that you just kind of start to see what you like, what you don't like, what drives you crazy. And there was this one summer where I went to two different weddings. The first one that I went to was this couple that's super cool. They lived all around the world, very adventurous. And I'm terrible with being a procrastinator with buying wedding gifts or any kind of gift, really. So I was literally on the way to the wedding and I stopped by Crate and Barrel to get whatever was left on their wedding registry that I could buy. And there weren't a lot of options, but one of the remaining options was like a $150 set of salt and pepper shakers. And it just felt so crazy to me that this couple that like this isn't typically how they spend their money or what they prioritize. And so that really sat with me for a few months. And then later that summer, I went to the separate wedding. In this case, it was a little bit more what I thought aligned with this couple. They had a few things on their wedding registry. One of them included swimming with dolphins on their honeymoon. And I was like, right on. This is right up my alley. I can give them some kind of experience, memory. And as I was going through the checkout at the time, you could tell you weren't actually buying them an experience. You were literally just sending them a PayPal transaction. And so that caught my attention, but I just rolled with it anyway. And they go on their honeymoon. We're getting drinks after they come back. And I said, "Oh, I can't wait to hear about the honeymoon. Had a blast at your wedding. Tell me about swimming with the dolphins. Did you guys have a good time? Did you take any pictures?" And they said, weddings are expensive. We just used it to pay the tab for the wedding kind of thing. And it felt like, I don't know, maybe I paid admission to a wedding. It just started to formulate this thought that so many of the gifts that are given around weddings is either this kind of antiquated household items, your linens and toasters and those kinds of things, or it's just money. And that doesn't feel, I mean, money is always useful. I'll never argue against that, but it's not the most connective kind of gift to give somebody. So that's what said, hey, what's another category that we can launch with gifting real experiences that people can use either on their honeymoon? About 50% of our customers in the wedding space use it on their honeymoon. The other 50%, we have a tagline, keep dating after I do. Like first year of your marriage, you have cool date nights or adventures, weekend getaways, those kinds of things. So that's how it all started, strictly with weddings.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You mentioned about weddings, and one of the things that stood out to me as I was preparing for our chat today, and I was, looking at your website, the fact you have wedding registries is a key part of it, and of course, you work with companies like The Knot or Zola, and
Yeah.
but it's interesting to hear that is so core to the origin story, and thinking about the time frame is because we've seen this massive shift for the experience economy. And of course, as we were having this conversation, I did write an article to start off this year about this is the year of transformative travel. And it was one of the reasons I was keen to have this conversation with you and to be able to do this spotlight episode, because this is also the year that Joe Pine has published his new book about the transformation economy. He's the guy that coined the term the experience economy. And if we look at, the zeitgeist and what changed, when I was speaking to Rod Cuthbert, the founder of Viator, one of the things he highlighted to me was that they really created Viator when the zeitgeist had shifted towards experiences over things, that we moved away from this like 80s, 90s mentality of Wall Street greed is good. And people, and he who dies with the most toys wins, that sort of mentality. That given that you and I are both a similar life experience, that we went through that. So we saw that transition and the fact that people are experiences. But the thing that stood out for me when I look at like your company is that I've been to those weddings, people in their 20s, and 30s that are, starting off in their life. They're, yes, okay, you might want some nice flatware or and you might be getting encouraged by that aunt and uncle to make sure you're registered for China. And I still remember going through this with my wife and like, do we really need this stuff, or why do we need a registry? Like we did like 9 weeks of traveling through Europe, and it wasn't even an option for us then to just say, buy us experiences, but that's what we wanted. So tell us a little bit more about how the business grew as a result of that. Is it like you recognize there was an opportunity here for people getting married, which is like this industry has only exploded in the last 10 or 15 years since you've created this company. So tell us a little bit about how important that was to get this company off the ground, and how important it still is to the business today.
Yeah, it's really fascinating from a demographic perspective, because if you rewind to, you were talking about, the 80s and 90s, if you go even further back to like the 50s, the average age for somebody in their first, they classify this as their first wedding for a US man was like 22 years old. And if for a woman, it was 20 years old. Fast forward to today, and that's like 32 and 30. And again, that's first weddings. Not that we are endorsing people having too many weddings, but whatever. Do you?
No, I was gonna say, what is the average age for a second wedding then?
That's a great question. I don't have that data, or first divorce kind of thing.
I guess
Yeah.
these are all situational, but yes, first wedding, no matter when you're getting married now, whether it's your 20s or 30s, but more likely in your 30s, you're still looking for experiences. So yeah, you were onto this early, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, more so because when you were getting married at 22, you didn't ever live on your own before. So there really was a purpose at the time for having this wedding registry that was like fill your house, But when people are getting married after the age of 30, really both sides of the equation probably has most of their goods. And it's more of an effort of consolidating, do you want your blender, or do you want to keep my blender? We don't need a third blender. So it's just one of those things where almost society changes before a lot of the pillars around it change with it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data that shows generally as consumer preference towards spending money on experiences has, I mean, decade after decade continues to go up relative to products. And you brought up something else that I thought was really interesting, because we talk about this dynamic too, is the keeping up with the Joneses. So it's not a healthy thing. This comparative, is my life better than the next person? But you're absolutely right. Like keeping up with the Joneses, when you and I were younger, we it was all about who has the nicer car and who has the bigger house, and things like this. That same kind of competitive, unhealthy mentality exists today, but it's a lot more the Instagram culture of who's traveling where, and who's got front row seats for the concert, or who's at the big game, whatever it might be. And again, I'm not endorsing that, it's good to be comparative. You should not do that. But it is interesting to see that that plays out now, as experiences are the things that people are trying to gather, as opposed to a bunch of household goods or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So I'm keen to actually explore how that's evolved in that, the 12 years. And as, having this conversation in 2026 and looking at the next 5 years, because from my perspective, the future couldn't be brighter for us working in travel, working experiences, demographic shifts, aging population, and the fact that you actually work in an interesting space that, started with wedding registries, which was the idea of giving a gift. But now, by and large, even when it comes to the holidays and birthdays, and it's just like, it's not just weddings, which is clearly something you have caught on to, is that people want to give the gift of experiences, because it is all about experience. So what do you think? I mean, obviously demographics is one, and clearly your numbers there. What other factors do you think has been driving this shift, and why do you think specifically it has exploded so much in the last decade?
Great question. It's, there's a lot to point to. I think when we first founded this, we thought it was certainly the younger generations are going to, be more interested in experiences over products. I mean, that was our big thing, is, you look at some of these people in their young 20s, and that seems to be all they care about these days. And there is some data that supports that. I think I saw 78% of millennials prefer a gift of an experience over product. That goes up to 90% when you get to Gen Z. So there are some generational kind of categorizations, but you're really seeing it across the board. We get older generations, Gen X and baby boomers, that you get to a certain point in life where you just realize that you know, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. At the end of it all, I'm going to think more about the people I spent the time with and what we spent that time doing, where we went, those kinds of things. So I think there's just something that's deeply human connecting about it all. But then just to talk specifically about the last 10 years, I mean, the pandemic was a very big driving factor. So you had experience spend growing and growing and growing, and then all of a sudden you couldn't travel anywhere, and these tour companies couldn't operate. And I think this did a few things. I think one, it ended up creating this like pent up demand to just do stuff, go places, this pent up demand for experiences. But I think also, like, we talk about having a bucket list, which is love that term, but a bucket list becomes a lot more tangible when you're going through a pandemic and you're like, oh man, I don't know how much longer I've got. So you see, like, across generations, a lot of people really started shifting their priority spend towards, hey, I don't know how long I got. Let's take that trip.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that, even the genesis of the Travel Trends podcast was very much post-pandemic. How has travel changed? And I really do believe very strongly that travel has come back different, even though the exception, of course, is that, when we were tracking consumer behavior post-pandemic, a lot of people were rushing out to do the trip that they weren't able to do beforehand. So like we actually saw a return to some of the things you'd expect because they needed to, they still wanted to do that trip to Europe and they wanted to check that off. And I think the idea of the bucket list is still relevant in the sense of people being aware of their mortality, but it's not just the older generation, which we know the baby boomers are aging, and half of them are retired and half of them will retire in the next 5 years. So that's a major demographic shift that most investors are paying attention to and understanding why travel is growing, even when there is concerns about the economy. That was one of the things that always used to stand out to me in my 20 plus years in the travel industry, is always this correlation between the stock market performance and travel. And as soon as the stock market, if it was people were getting concerned about their investment portfolio, they'd start traveling less. But we're no longer seeing the same correlations because people are just prioritizing it more and more. So like the idea of them traveling more and spending more on experiences, and it's as you were pointing out, it's not just I look at it more as a psychographic than a demographic, because it doesn't matter what age you are, you're going to want to have experiences. But some of the things I'm really keen to get into with you, Cody, is like the types of experiences that people are choosing. And when I was preparing for our conversation, one of the things I always, being an entrepreneur as well myself, I'm an eternal optimist. So I'm always, approaching things from, a very optimistic point of view. But at the same time, I always try and look for kind of pain points or like, why someone wouldn't use it. And one of the things I think about when I give gifts is, am I picking the type of experience that I know they're going to want? Because everyone assumes, for example, with me, that I would love doing, like I'm a snorkeler, but I'm not a scuba diver. People are like, and I'm like, because I'm not comfortable being that deep underwater. I'm not a strong swimmer and I'm a little bit claustrophobic. So like, people are like, oh, if you like, everyone assumes I'm a scuba diver. But like, so one of the things that stood out to me when I was preparing for our chat is looking at all the different experiences. And I know you got more than 4,000 different experiences, but also, some of the pain points do you address really upfront about giving gifts, which is like you can swap one experience for another. The vouchers never expire. Some of these things that, like, if I'm going to give someone the gift of a Spur experience, I want to make sure that like 90% certain this is what they want. And if it's not exactly what they want, they can get something else. So tell us a little bit about how you came about this, how the model kind of evolved into what we see today.
Yeah, some of these things are absolutely essential that you bring up because typically what might classify as gifting an experience is somebody might buy a gift card for a restaurant or for a specific activity for the one rafting company or whatever it might be. And that can go south in a variety of ways. The restaurant closes its doors and you're left with a gift card that you can't use. Or, the person that you're gifting it to moved across the country and now they can't use for this very specific tour. So I think that really is a big value add for Spur, but also any of these companies that are kind of aggregating different experiences as gifts, is the ability to very quickly swap it one for the next. Saw this recently with this couple that had recently gotten married, and they were very adventurous couple, and one of the things that they received as a gift was bungee jumping. I think in New Zealand, bungee jumping. And they subsequently found out that they were pregnant, and were like, yeah, don't want to bungee jump when you're pregnant. And so they said, hey, we saw that in our hometown that there's some kind of couples massage that has like a prenatal aspect to it. Can we swap it for this? And it's just systematic, super easy to do. I think that's just important, is that you do your best. You do want it to be personal. You hope that they're going to use that, but you don't ultimately want them to be locked into using that. It needs to be really easy to swap one for the next, and we make that very simple. We have close to a 90% utilization rate of experiences that we sell within the first year of getting that experience, which a lot of the gift card industry is closer to like 50%. So that ultimately that's what we want, is people to go on these experiences, to buy another experience, to gift other people. But you have to make it easy for people to go on them.
Yeah. Well, you bring up something else. Actually, that's an important point just to highlight, because I'm actually keen to know the difference between gift cards and gifting experiences, because one of the things that certainly gift card companies rely on is breakage. And so it's another one of those things that's just like, to me, that's heartbreaking. The idea that like there is a solid percentage of people that will never either go to that restaurant or choose to use that gift card to make a purchase. And that's one of the things I've never understood about the traditional gift card market myself, is because I just give someone cash. Like, why give you $100 or $250 in a gift card for somewhere that you might want something for, as opposed to, the most, but the experience to me suggests that you've given it some thought, some consideration. It's more meaningful. And you also want to do something that will create a greater bond and connection to you and that individual, because maybe this is an experience that you've had that you want someone else to realize. Like, you've been bungee jumping, you've heard someone else talking about it, you want to give them that gift. So yeah, tell us a little bit, I guess, more about some of the motivations you've seen for gifting. And then I really want to get into what have been some of the most successful experiences you've introduced, and where you see the most also positive feedback, where people are just like, I got this gift from this company that I hadn't heard from before called Spur Experiences. I went to this trip, and now it's like, I'm getting that for everyone I know. That's like, and I'm sure that happens to you guys. It's like, I got a Spur Experience gift, and now I'm going to get it for 10 other people. And that's what I'm going to do for all my birthday gifts this year.
Yeah, we, as you mentioned earlier, we partnered with some really big retailers in the wedding space, the Knot, Zola, Joy, three different companies that have, like, they pretty much own the wedding planning space. So couples that are getting married, they'll put on these wedding sites that it's this is where the hotels to stay at, the scheduled events, that kind of thing, and now they're wedding registries. And what we found is it's generally easier to just, for the couple, to just sell through these big platforms. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. We see that in other cases as well, where we're on a company called Sendozu, and I know we'll get into it, but with the corporate gifting side of things, where we get a lot of our customers initially through other retailers. So they're just kind of being handed to us. And then it really is our job to make, we say, we aim to be a great experience, gifting and booking great experiences. So that entire user experience side of seeing what's available with real-time availability, booking it. But then once you go on it, we really think about that post-redemption process. How do we try to get reviews as much as we can? But one of the things that I'm most excited about is the social component, because ultimately that's what gifting is like the social connection between two people. We've got this pretty cool feature where after you go on it, so if you gifted somebody an experience, they go on it, they're sent a reminder that says, Dan gave me this experience. Would you like to send him a quick thank you? And the two of them on the food tour together can take a picture, send it your way, and give you that just positive feedback loop that we think creates, more positive relationships, but then selfishly makes it more likely that you're going to just feel the positive feels there and give somebody else that experience in the future.
Yeah. Well, let's get into as we're talking about some of those experiences and what ultimately has, I guess, the strongest emotional impact in the case of recipients. Because one of the things that I think about when the difference between giving using the example of a wedding gift, going back to where our conversation started and thinking about, examples from my own wedding and things you keep in the house, right? Like, and it's just like we had a very traditional wedding at a church and part of that was, getting all the gifts to kind of set you up in your home. And I even remember at the time I was kind of pushing back against it, but I was kind of being reminded that that's what people want to buy. And they all want to figure out like what you don't have yet. And I definitely still have things that we've not used 20 years later that, are in a cabinet, some crystal glasses that I think one year I decided like, you know what, this is the year we're going to use them. Like, let's just start using them because we haven't touched them yet. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So there's this element. Someone got me a great gift last year. It was actually Brendan from Propelic, who's one of our partners over at Travel Trends. And he gave me this lovely handwritten card, and he gave me a one of those photo frames that allows you to change the different images, right? So and for me that was actually a meaningful gift because it really actually for me highlights what I want to share, what I want to see myself, which is all the places we've been, and it's also what I would like my guests to see or like company or family to see, because that's where I put most of my time, energy, money, and focus. So I'm happy for people to not only to see them, but also make them conversation pieces, right? So at my house, it's covered in images of our travels or some of the souvenirs we've brought, like handcrafted souvenirs from our travels. So tell us when it comes to the experiences themselves, what people are like. So for me, I guess just to finish on that thought, it was that I would way rather give the gift of an experience over a physical good and one of the reasons I think that would be advantageous. And again, this is your area, not mine. But one of the things that I've certainly learned in my experience in the travel industry is that, and I'll use the example, Cody, of there's a technology company that works with hotels and they enable them to sell activities. And one of the things they realized on this journey was that initially they were trying to sell hotels on the idea of additional revenue that they could generate as a result of offering activities. What they actually realized is that people who book an activity in addition to staying at a hotel end up giving a much higher rating and a review for that hotel because of the halo effect of the fact they stayed at that hotel in London, but they went and had this incredible experience. And then overall, they come away from that trip feeling far more joy, satisfaction, and look more positively at the hotel experience. And that for me is sort of a profound marketing idea for businesses to tap into. And I guess there's a part of me that wonders, Cody, if that applies to someone that you're trying to impress with a gift, that like someone's going to not just look at that piece of china, they're going to look at they're going to remember what you gave them and be like, you know what, that was you. That was one of the best gifts I've ever got. So tell us about those gifts themselves. Like, what are those gifts that people have given that have had that type of impact?
Well, and just briefly to talk, I mean, you bring up such a good point with the importance of the memory on it. So there's a lot of psychology behind experiences, and unlike a product as a gift where you might get a little bump in your whatever, it, it- with experiences, we see happiness at three different points in the process. So one is just like the planning phase. So like in anticipation of it. So when you're planning your travel, you're getting excited about it. Work gets a little bit easier because you've got this trip coming up or whatever it might be. But you're getting excited, but you're also uh, connecting with whoever you're planning on going on that trip with. Like, hey, I can't wait till we do this, that kind of thing. The second piece is in the moment, like on the experience, it's a blast. But the third piece is in the memory of it. You just file that away in your memory bank. It shows up on your digital photo that you just kind of mentioned, and it's something that you just kind of keep forever. And so experiences are very differentiated from product gifts in that you're getting these like three different times where you're driving up happiness. So that's the first piece. If I think I may be a little biased. So much of it is so individual, and it's hard to figure out like how much of this is just my own lens versus everybody else's. But I tend to think that the experiences that are completely new to somebody are the ones that they remember the most. And it doesn't necessarily have to be super expensive. I recently went on one where it was very humane. If we do anything with animals, we make sure we triple check everything. But we just uh, I had a date where we went on a feed baby kangaroos. We got to like meet these baby kangaroos and bottle feed them, and that's something I'll never forget. And so I think it's just the uniqueness of it. Another really popular one that I got to go on, visited Kauai. One of my favorite experiences of my life is there's a doors off helicopter tour that we have that takes you by like the Jurassic Park waterfall, if you remember that from the movie.
Of
Um,
course, I do. Yeah.
yeah, but it's just thrilling, and Kauai is so beautiful. Anybody that goes on that experience, they are very likely to keep using Spur, and it's kind of the halo effect we aim for as well. Is we have thousands of individual operators that are delivering great experiences, and that's the aim, is that they deliver something, and then our customers come back to us because they've experienced that themselves.
Well, and when I think about it, was interesting you mentioned that example with Hawaii, because my producer of the podcast, Zach, who many of our listeners know, runs dinosaur trips. So for sure he's gonna like that part. And I got him some dinosaur gifts for his last birthday. And like this is when you're trying to figure out
Right.
who to get what for. That's one of the things that I was also, when I was navigating your website, I'm sure many people, as we're having this conversation, will be on spurexperiences.com and just, checking out some of the things we're talking about. One of the things that stood out to me is like, you have the types of experiences. So like things from like animals, to like health and wellness, like even water sports, like, so trying to figure out what is it that, someone is into. And for me, and then the kind of gift ideas. Like, I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I know that's a big, when people think of adventure, they often think of what we often refer to in the industry as like hard adventure as opposed to soft adventure. I'm much more into the experience and cuisine and community. And so I'm much more of a globetrotter or even a foodie. And I know you have those sort of classifications as well, as far as trying to figure out, what you're going to gift for. What do you see as being like kind of like your big three or big five that people tend to gravitate towards and have the most positive feedback?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have like 150 like specific categories of experiences, and that gets to be just a little difficult to shop through because it's just so specific. So that's things like kayak tours or beer making experiences, like highly specific. And so what we started to find is it's really important to think about, again, there's such a human element here. What is the persona? What is the identity of that person that likes these different things? So we identified like 8 different personas. You mentioned a few of them. I think Globetrotters is definitely one of them. We get people that love travel and they just want to experience culture, food, whatever it is to see and to experience when you go to those places. So that's a huge one. Adrenaline junkies is another big one, but I think foodies, and we kind of classify people that love wine in the foodies category. But we have some really great food tours. I know some of my favorites. Secret Food Tours is one of our big partners, and they're really cool because they find not just the overly beaten path of what restaurants to go to, but kind of like the insider knowledge of the specific menu item you want to try out at these different restaurants. So much so that people that actually live in those cities can get a lot out of just going at one of these secret food tours. So that's one that's kind of classifies as foodies. We have fitness and like health and wellness one, Zen Masters. A lot of people are into that these days. I personally love going to like sauna and cold plunge and doing a lot of those things. So yeah, I think it just kind of starts with, and it helps the shopping process, is just to say it's a cross section of location and what's your persona. You're in Toronto and you're a foodie. Great, we can help you really kind of isolate experiences that they may like.
Yeah, and the other thing, because obviously the reason I wanted to discuss that is I was, when I'm first looking at spurexperiences.com and thinking about it from my own personal perspective, because like any of us, you're motivated by self-interest. So the first thing I'm initially looking for is what would I like to do, right? That's just like, so
Totally.
knowing that I could purchase an experience for myself or for my wife or my family. So I'm kind of initially shopping for myself. And then my mind was kind of going with, oh, this would actually be really a great gift for Zach or for someone else in my world if I'm looking to get a gift. So you obviously have the marketplace, you have the instant booking option that people can choose to just book an experience for themselves. But in terms of the gifting part, I know we talked a little bit of wedding registries. The one other area that I think that would be a great opportunity, I think about, like, I got all of our Travel Trends team members a gift. And I always get people, I'm always big on birthdays and I'm always big on holidays. And like, I always think it's such an important thing to get people gifts and meaningful gifts, which again is one of the reasons I want to have this conversation. So, but I think of that. I mean, it's technically corporate gifts if I'm giving them to team members. But that's one of the things for me is like, what do you give someone that like, that you work with? And it's just like, another coffee mug or so especially people like, even trying to buy your boss a gift, like you buy them a bottle of wine, like it's like, so tell us a little bit about corporate gifting. I'm keen to know how that works from your experience. What appeals to people for corporate gifting, and where are you seeing that work?
This is another one that really we kind of tripped over. Uh, because the market demanded it. So there are some similar to the wedding industry where you've got these big kind of planning sites like the Knot, Zola, Joy. One of the fastest growing industries is corporate gifting, really big in Europe, starting to get some pretty good traction in the US. So we're partnered with a company called Sendozu, which is one of these, and they're really good they do a lot of the things of managing even the messaging to say, hey, kudos on that project that you guys just delivered, really, really good there. But one of the aspects is they have corporate gifting on there. And, it could be anything from plaques and mugs to tailor-made golf clubs to, different things like that. But what we've found is if you think about it, if your company bonused you, say, $500, great. Nobody's ever going to turn down money. You should always pay people what they're worth and then some. But it's not something that actually creates a memory. It doesn't create, once it hits your bank account, you generally don't remember it. Whereas that same company says, we are going to do, this suite at some concert event or something like that, and where we can all kind of team build or whatever it might be. They found that this is the type of thing that creates just a stronger connection with employees, but also more longevity within the company. So since some of this data started coming out, we've been approached by a lot of these corporate gifting platforms saying, hey, we want people to be able to gift their sales targets, their employees, their, whatever it might be, experiences. One of the most popular categories for that with us is sporting event tickets, which is notoriously so hard to gift because it's so specific. Do you know what team they like? Do you know what event date they can go to? What's their seat preferences? And so we've created a model where we have a ticketing integration similar to StubHub or anything, where you could just kind of generically say, I want to gift you New York Knicks tickets. And then they receive that. They later go on to choose the specific game and seats directly on our website. So it really balances that, like you're giving them something meaningful, but they're able to have the flexibility to choose what specifically works for them. I'm hugely excited about corporate gifting, though. I think it combines a fast growing industry of corporate gifting with a fast growing industry of tours and experiences as well.
I guess the one thing we have to be mindful of corporate gifts is music concerts like Coldplay. That might be a career limiting move. If you give that to the CEO and the head of HR, that would be a good example of a gift to avoid. Yeah,
that's a great point. We need to strip out any Coldplay off the website.
Exactly. Oasis, I know Oasis is good, but Coldplay. But in terms of the corporate gift, because I'm asking this genuinely because I'm actually keen to know like what the type of gifts, specifically obviously sporting events. So, but if people are trying to put reward programs in place, that's one of the things that I think I've seen so many companies that have these very kind of standard and tired, like, you've worked there for a year, you worked there for 5 years. And it's just like, you get a pen, you get a watch. And it's like, and I was like, after 10 years, one of the companies that I was working within was like, after 10 years, you get a $250 gift certificate to use to a lodge. And it was like, everyone was working their way towards that. And it was literally the pen, watch, and then this or it was two nights at a lodge. And I was just like, start with that. Like, it's just like, like give someone the gift of getting away. And that was always like, I worked at Lonely Planet. My boss had given us, as a reward for we actually got to stay at this, it was like an Airbnb ahead of its time, but like the idea was like we were given the gift of a getaway, and it was amazing. And I came back feeling like motivated, inspired, and I kind of realized like this is actually incredibly beneficial to the employer, because I'm now like, it definitely it made me more loyal. It felt me more connected to the company. So tell me a bit about that, because I'm like, as opposed to just a one-off gift, it's like, how are you seeing companies in the corporate giving actually kind of building in more of like a reward-based program, though, where they just, the idea is that this is your first Spur experience, and the value goes up over time. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, to be completely transparent, it's pretty new. This space is for us, but we've started working with a couple companies that said every year they want to have this much of a budget that goes through Spur, just for an experience budget. Get out there as part of. I mean, they're thinking about it more along their total health package of, so many people are working from home these days, and there's just disconnected from the real world, from for some people getting outside. So we're hearing a lot more from that. We're developing programs that are just that for somebody in their first year, it's this much that goes to this budget, and it becomes a selling point through the recruitment process, but it also becomes retention, and it also becomes this, like you said, it leads to you're more productive typically when you're refreshed, when you get back from vacation, whatever it might be. So those are some of the ideas, very new, but we're meeting with a company that's a lodging company right now, and they say we absolutely believe in travel. We want to have it as part of our standard program that they have a budget every year, our employees do, to get out and go do whatever experience they want to do.
Interesting. And so the other one I want to go back to is the consumer gifting for a moment too.
Yep.
Is that because one of the big motivations is milestones. We used to have this idea of celebration travel. So when consumers are booking a trip, a perfect example of that is going to be Africa. Like almost all trips to Africa are celebration travel. They are honeymoons, they're retirement parties, they're 50th birthdays. It's like it's milestone moments. And so, and that's when you're also going to spend a more significant amount on someone. So what are some of the trends that you see when it comes to consumer gifting with that in mind? With like, and I guess I'm specifically asking, what are some of the great experience gifts to give someone for a milestone birthday or a milestone event?
Yeah, we do see that. We see, people talking about graduations, people talking about retirements. We had joked around a little bit earlier about, I mean, we see people that are doing like divorce gifts. Let's go out and do that thing you've been wanting to do. So there are these big life milestones, absolutely, that the bigger the milestone, the more extravagant I think the gift is and the experience itself. A lot of those seem to be the bigger adventure, either a bigger adventure one or something that really is on that bucket list. Like they always wanted to see the Colosseum. So we have like the exclusive VIP access to the Colosseum. A lot of that is either anchored in some bucket list, kind of scary adventure that I was always wanted to do, or it's anchored in that destination I wanted to go to, but I want to do it right. If I'm going to go to Stonehenge, I want to make sure that I've got this super cool transportation to get there and back. But I think it really does tie to that bucket list idea. This is something that I've just thought about for the longest time. I've hit this turning of the chapter, and it's time to celebrate in this kind of way.
Well, the other thing I was also keen to know, and I think about giving a gift, a lot of time I'm buying a gift at the last minute, but I don't know that and it's certainly in my own experience, sometimes when I'm traveling, I'm booking things at the last minute. But I guess it wouldn't always be the case that someone is going to take advantage of a last minute type experience. I'm curious to know when it comes to whether it's buying something last minute or even trying to look at some last minute availability. Where does that factor in? Or is it the case that more often people are buying, they're buying them knowing that someone's going to do it in the next 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months? I'm asking this because I'm actually genuinely curious. I know travel booking cycles quite well, and especially when people are purchasing for themselves, how long they time to like make their research, and then that the decision phase, the booking phase, the travel, and then returning back. What does that look like when it comes to gifting and the idea of actually giving experiences? Are you seeing people buying them ahead of time, knowing that, and what does that booking window look like for the person on the other end that's receiving it? Is it something they're doing in the next 3 months? Is it something they're doing in the next 12 months?
It depends on the channel. With weddings, we tend to see where people are registering for gifts anywhere from 6 to 18 months before their wedding. And then a lot of times they're using it pretty quickly after their wedding. The majority of the gifts happen within about a month to 2 months leading up to the wedding itself. So they're starting the person that ends up saying what they want to do, the recipient, they're starting to plan that way ahead of time along with their honeymoon. They end up receiving the gifts, maybe we'll say a month before the wedding and a month before they're going to use it. And then they get online and they can just, like you said, we have integrations with a dozen different res tech platforms where they can see real-time availability that's standardized depending on what the platform is. So they can see their real-time availability. Outside of weddings, it's interesting because one of the nice things about booking experience is you can buy last minute. We got the last holiday season, we got a lot of purchases where you don't have to go to the mall, where you just jump on the website and you can buy that voucher knowing they've got this trip planned at some point this upcoming year or whatever it might be. And if it doesn't pan out, they can exchange it for something else. We see a lot of last minute gift buying relative to holidays because it's great for procrastinators, frankly. But then their booking of redeeming that gift, it follows what I think are pretty traditional kind of travel planning schedules. So if you're going to buy them a gift, they're going to typically want to know what they're doing at least a month before the actual trip comes up. Just something to keep in mind. It can be hard to buy a gift for somebody if you're like, oh, they leave tomorrow for, wherever they're going to Argentina, and I'm going to try to buy them a gift that they can use on there. It tends to not work out too well when they do that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I actually really like talking about events and how, because I've learned a lot over my time, certainly being married, but also having a family. And I'll give you an exact example that might be interesting for our audience. And I hope I'm not oversharing here. But when it comes to events like Valentine's Day, I always think of Valentine's Day as a gift between, it's a romantic gift between partners. But I've actually, since the time my wife and I have been together, our in-laws have always given us a gift on Valentine's Day. That's always kind of been instilled to them, that they're and typically it, will be like a restaurant reservation or or wine or something like that. But they will always do a Valentine's gift. And it's one of the things I think about with our kids, who are now in university, is one of the things actually I want to continue on is give a gift for Valentine's as an example. But I'm always, I guess, remiss at it's one of the things you learn sometimes by your elders or sometimes by experience to be like, hey, that's a great idea. You didn't have it yourself, but when it comes to an event like that, so using Valentine's as a for instance, because you mentioned the holidays, but or even Thanksgiving, what would be a good gift giving guide? So if you wanted to give someone a gift, whether it's the partners or give a couple a gift of a Valentine's, what would stand out to you as because that would be one of the things I would be looking for, to be like, and maybe there's a section for that, but what would be a good Valentine's experience?
Yeah, some of the most popular ones include, it's the more romantic things. We have different winery trips, that kind of thing. We have couples massages, hot springs getaways. A lot of those things that make good dates, I think, are the ones. Cooking classes is another example. I think it can be kind of fun too on a more casual basis. We have some that are more, this is probably oversimplifying it, but the things like, the bowling date or whatever it might be, especially for the younger crowd. We have games and activities as a category. So it just kind of depends on that piece, but anything that makes a good date, I generally think makes a good gift for Valentine's Day. I love any of the spa, health, and wellness. Under ours, if gifts and Zen Masters, it's got everything that's really kind of spa related under that. I think that tends to be just a really good way of connecting with somebody.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely like the spa experience, but the one you just pointed out too is the winery one, because that's one that I've not done before, but that's something that I know I personally enjoy. Is there, over the course of a calendar year, aside from the holiday period and then Valentine's, what are some other key dates for consumers when they buy experiences? Is Thanksgiving an example of that? What else would stand out to you? Obviously birthdays, when we've talked about some of the milestones, but is there any other key events over the course of a calendar year where you see a holiday being a great gift giving experience?
It's interesting. So our business, close to 50% of gifts given happen between Thanksgiving and like the first week of January. It's crazy amount. So some of ours, we're not so seasonal because then we actually are counter cyclical to that with weddings. So like 80% of weddings happen between May 1st and November 1st. So it kind of creates this piece that fits together. But Valentine's is big. You'll see a lot of Mother's Day, Father's Day gifts, and some that will do promotions that run at those times of years. And again, Mother's Day, a lot of the spa stuff, a lot of just kind of how do you pamper mom type of thing. And, dad sporting events tends to be a big one for that time of year. But graduation gifts around then as well. Summers are all about weddings. And then a big part of ours is just birthdays, which are kind of just obviously sprinkled out throughout the year. But experiences make an awesome birthday
Yeah,
present.
for sure. And obviously one of the things there, I mean, experiences are deeply personal. So you obviously need to know someone fairly well. And also, and even
100%.
as we were just chatting, as I'm looking through the website, trying to figure out what would work for me or my family or as a gift. And I talked a little bit about, how I've seen things organized, but when it actually comes to guiding people to make that right decision, as we've been highlighting, how do you guys go about that? And I'm just genuinely curious whether, if you're using any AI or recommendation engines to kind of match gift givers with some of the tailored experiences. So tell us a little bit about how that works so that when people are checking out spurexperiences.com and trying to figure out what's for them and what's for others, what you guys are doing in the back end and the front end for the user experience,
Yep.
and ultimately trying to make sure that it's simple, enjoyable, and you're getting people what they want.
Yeah. Yeah, we're AI is fascinating in the travel space. I'm sure you've covered that quite a bit. One of the ways that we start on the very front end is just sourcing experiences. We use AI to say, what is the trending new locations to visit? What are the activity types that are really popping up these days? Who are some of the ideal operators that we don't have yet on our platform? So we use AI to do a lot of the sourcing on the very front end. But then when it comes to the customer side, our experiences are tagged with what types of uh, gifts that they seem to work for. And what I mean by that is there's the event itself that this makes a good wedding gift or this makes a good corporate gift or whatever it might be. Then they're tagged with the location, which is always everybody starts with location filtering. I mean, even if you get the perfect gift, if it's something that they're not, in the same city, it's not going to do them any good. Um, but then also down to the experience level, we use AI to map out what experience is similar to another experience. And so ultimately, if you start browsing one, our backend AI engine will basically say, based on what this person's going for, we think it'll feed them other recommendations that they think matches it pretty closely. So it just makes that shopping experience easier and easier. But most of that is on those three things: location, experience type, and event or celebration type.
Got it. And I'm given you've got such a diverse mix of options. Is the focus on is there experiences you're still looking to add to the platform that you guys are, when you're getting feedback from clearly, your business has been around for 12 years and like you've got a lot of repeat customers. So like, is there new areas you're pushing into, or is more the focus in just improving the guest experience and matchmaking, or is it actually expanding the inventory? Because I know you already have a significant amount. So yeah, tell us a little bit, I guess, where you're headed in 2026 and beyond.
Yeah. So in the past, it's all been, you always want quality, but it has been a big volume push. We're now in 80 countries. We're actually up to over 8,000 experiences. Uh, More going forward, what we're really trying to do is just focus on two things. One, rounding out markets. So again, we use AI to evaluate our own market relative to what you might see on a TripAdvisor or Viator you had mentioned before. Where do we have any kind of gaps based on like making sure that we have a full catalog in any of these locations? So it's really strategically going and looking for like a gap analysis there. But the other thing is just any kind of differentiated experience, something that's, the new hot experience that people want to try that is getting consistently. We're able to pull in the reviews it's getting off of different sites. And we can see on Airbnb or TripAdvisor, whoever it might be, this experience type is getting 5 stars consistently. We need to use that to go get a differentiated experience. So we went from like a 50-50 quality and quantity mix in terms of our focus to really just saying, let's round out markets. Let's add differentiated, high value experiences to our portfolio in 2026.
Well, yeah, you bring up a really interesting point there, and I think it's a really a key one for our global listeners to understand is that where these apply to, because clearly I was thinking about it even myself from a North American perspective and looking at, and there's clearly destinations around the world, but tell us a little bit about who the audience is today, like where your customers currently are, and also where you're expanding to by virtue of having experiences, globally and in so many countries.
Yeah, majority of our customers, so probably about 75% is US and Canada is where the customer lives. So we can obviously track like billing address, and that's where most of them are. But the majority, I don't know about the majority, but a very big chunk of our experiences are purchased in Europe. Europe's really popular. Growing tends to be Caribbean and uh, Asia Pacific, including Australia and um, New Zealand. But eh, we certainly need a bigger focus on how do we reach customers that live in these places, not just the customers that live in the US and are traveling to those places. And that's something that we're, kind of strategically meeting about is how do we get those customers that actually live there as well. But yeah, most of our sales happen to people that are from US or Canada.
Right. And I think that's where, from a global point of view, I mean, we've got listeners in 125 countries. Certainly, most of our
Yep.
listeners are in North America. But I think that, as we see trends, and obviously that's a big focus of our show. And one of the things I'm keen to ask you about next is some of the trends you're seeing in the world of experiences and gifting. But like it certainly is more and more the case that, whether it's Europe or Australia, New Zealand, Asia, like there's just, I see this as, there's a strong human desire to have experiences that's cross-cultural, right? So it's like, this may be something that is primarily, in the US today, but, there is global opportunity for Spur Experiences, which I'm sure you're have ambitions and are thinking about. But tell us a little bit beyond the geography and the type of customer. How you see this evolving, like the experience economy, this kind of relatively new form of gifting, even though I say you've been around for 12 years, but where do you see this headed, whether it be with the weddings or workplaces, with travelers that are definitely seeking connection over consumer products? Tell us a little bit about where you see this industry headed in the next few years.
Well, it's interesting because you do have an established preference towards gifting or spending money on experiences instead of products, but we just have in our industry, it's really just an awareness challenge of just saying this is available as an option. You already know that you would prefer an experience, but most customers don't know, okay, what do I do with that? Where do I gift somebody an experience through? How does it work? All these things. So I think that's what it largely is going to be over the next several years is um, get better aligned through awareness of matching what people's interests are of spending money or receiving gifts on experiences to what they're actually given. So that's largely, I mean, that's on us. That's something that we need to tackle. I think some of the other things that are really exciting for me, we influencer marketing is becoming more and more important all around. And I saw this stat that said for uh, people that are the demographic 21 to 35, TikTok is a bigger buyer referral platform than Google is. So whereas you or I are, people a little bit more gray in our beards, we would never even think of that. We search Google and we go that way. Um, for these younger demographics, they are learning through TikTok, through influencers. So we've launched an influencer program. We have something like 100 different influencers signed up where we comp them experiences in exchange for them to share to their audience, to help us with that awareness lift, and to create just really high value content. Um, so I think that's where it's headed. I do think the retail shops, us, or if you're getting to just more traditional OTAs like a Viator, are really important because it's hard to comparative shop two different experiences. If I'm looking at two different rafting companies, they're structured in different ways. This one has instant booking, this one doesn't. It makes it really, really challenging. Part of our job is to normalize all of that data, make the shopping experience, the comparative shopping, much easier for the consumer, but also to pull in rich media content, really good videos, link it to the influencer that's already been on it, so you just get the social proof. So these are all things that we're working on, but I think it all comes down to like that deeper human connection of experiences, but also the social involvement of it all. Really excited for some of these opportunities.
Yeah, it was really interesting. One of the things that I was certainly thinking about when I was preparing for our conversation and looking at the website and just understanding your marketing and positioning, one of the things that had stood out to me was distribution. It was like, is this available for travel agents, for example? And so, you obviously work with distribution partners that you've like Zola the Knot, and like so those are, and even retail. Like, how do you get this in front of people? Certainly with weddings, with corporate groups, that type of thing. Where does travel agents stand in this? Like, is there an opportunity for travel agents to be able to resell or to be able to earn commissions on Spur Experiences?
Yeah, there is. So we've got a few of those set up already. So with travel agents, we earn a commission that's pretty standard commission of that is any market from Airbnb to TripAdvisor for selling an experience. We split that evenly with any travel agent that ends up selling our experiences, and we have some pretty cool dashboards that we can do if it's a big enough agency where it'll basically say co-branded. When you log in, you'll see their logo next to our logo, and any of the sales that happen through that kind of um, shop, we end up sharing the commissions with those travel agents. So yeah, that's absolutely something that we do.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I highlighted that because obviously, given our B2B audience and, my background and a lot of the travel advisors that listen to the podcast, as well as consortia groups and travel agencies that, are seeing more and more interest in this. So, because as soon as you mentioned influencers, obviously it's a very similar idea. Like the influencers are, in many ways, the modern conduit that leads someone to a direct purchase. They see something that someone's posted on TikTok, and the first thing is, and we all know this because you see an experience someone else has had, and you want that yourself. You're like, oh, you then discover that, oh, wait a second, where did they book that, or what experience were they on? And then you find out about something and you book it. There's an immediacy there with social commerce, but then there's also the traditional channels, which I think a lot of companies miss the opportunity to actually engage with traditional travel advisors who are as relevant today as ever, and more so in many cases, especially for luxury products or for products that require a bit more education and a bit more hand-holding. One of the things I wanted to call out too that stood out to me was the fact that with your wedding registries, you also work with charities, and that's something that's very meaningful to me because when you're going through a wedding, it's also a time of great abundance, and sometimes there's an element that is like that you are and the whole idea of giving. Again, I've always been interested in companies like Tom's Shoes or this like give one, get one. It's like, that you actually just genuinely feel better about the decisions you're making. And so I thought that was actually a really interesting standout that I guess 5% of the sales of any couple's registry will go to the charity they've selected. And I just wanted to call that out specifically because I was intrigued by the charities you've partnered with. So yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd showcase that and share that myself. But yeah, is there anything else along those lines, Cody, that would be interesting for our audience to know about Spur Experiences, about where you guys are and where you're headed?
Yeah, the charity thing is definitely a personal thing for me as well. It's how do you create something that doesn't just do well, but it does good. I think it's an interesting application the way we've done it because a lot of times you kind of force a business almost forces the charity to go through one very specific cause or organization. We try to open that up. So yeah, we have hundreds of charities that have their own charity account on our site. And for wedding couples, you're absolutely right. It's a time of abundance, but I think it's also a time to just kind of establish this is what's meaningful in our lives as part of the couple's wedding story. So I really like that aspect. But no, I think Spur, a lot of the things we've talked about, trying to create a platform that is a great experience, gifting and booking great experiences, and very open to the potential distribution partners. We've worked with the wedding companies, we've worked with the corporate gifting partners, companies, excuse me, and we're also same thing. We work with travel companies, and just how do we bring better experiences as part of um, the consumer journey as part of their trips, that kind of thing. So 100% totally open to that. Love our distribution partners. And what's nice about us, we're small enough business in terms of we don't have a lot of outside investors or anything like that, that we can get really creative with these partnerships. So I would just share that as well as to any of your listeners. If there's something that we should sit down and just kind of chop it up over, see if there's an opportunity here, always very open to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's certainly one of the things that had stood out to me is actually speaking directly to them, to travel advisors, because I know all the travel advisors listening to this is questions they're getting asked because they have such deep relationships with these travelers and they get to know them so well and they know their kids and they know their families and they're the ones that can also say, you know what you should do? Get them the gift of an experience for their graduation. And next thing you know, they'll be booking this trip because they want to do a small group trip or so yeah, I definitely think there's growth potential there. It's exciting to see where your business has gotten to and where you are and where you're headed. I have a few last questions for you that I want to make sure that I highlight to our audience around the types of experiences they should consider gifting. I know I've touched on this a bit, but I want to know some of your favorites and some of your standouts. Okay. So for someone who's never gifted an experience before, what would be your advice to them to get started?
I would 100% say either Spur or one of the other gifting sites. It's so much, we make it easy to gift this way. We make it easy to transfer one for the next. Vouchers, not just with us, but some of our competitors. Vouchers don't expire. We make it really, really easy so you don't give the customer something that they ultimately can't use. So I would say it is in the best interest of the recipient to go through one of these kind of big retail platforms for gifting. And then the second piece is just take a crack at it. I mean, whatever you think it might be, there's some that almost everybody enjoys. Nearly everybody enjoys some of these cool food tours that we do where you get to explore the city and eat some good food along the way. That's not a hard one to hit. Um, but I would say those are some of the quickest. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to worry too much about, I need to get this very specific experience for somebody, because some of these are broad interests. And even if you miss, there's a really easy way for them to exchange it for something that they like.
For sure. And then these two are personal questions, and they're very much intended to be that, which is on the platform. And I know this first one's going to be a little difficult for you because you have to, support all your partners. But is there one particular experience that you have had personally from the collection you offer that was most meaningful or kind of the biggest standout for you?
Most meaningful. I mentioned that Hawaii one earlier. That was just jaw-dropping. But I'd say another one that was similar is I did waterfall rappelling in Costa Rica, over by like Lake Arenal. And we happened to be doing it on like an Easter Sunday. And it was just one of these things where you're rappelling down this cliff and the water's hitting you in the face. Uh, it was magical. So I love Costa Rica. Anybody that has a chance to get down there, or really anywhere in Central America that's safe enough, it's a beautiful part of the world. So that's a big one. Another one that is our most popular experience across our entire catalog is Iron Mountain Hot Springs up in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Beautiful, relaxing. They have all these individual hot springs pools, and it's right on the river with the mountains and the sunset, and you can get a cocktail delivered right to your little swimming pool. So that one, for anybody that's visiting Colorado or lives in Colorado, Iron Mountain Hot Springs is can't miss.
Very cool. And then when it comes to actually gifting for someone, because I've been to Costa Rica and I loved our trip to Costa Rica. I've not rappelled down a waterfall, so I'm actually that intrigues me. But it also made me think about what I might want to get someone else, because when I hear that it had a meaningful impact on you, it might not be something that I've done myself, but it's like so. When it comes to something you have gifted to someone you love, what has been a standout? Because I'm sure being in this business for as long as you have, the first instinct you have for giving a gift is like, wait a second, I'm going to give you an experience. So from your experience of giving experiences, what were the biggest highlights that you would suggest other people pay attention to, or just really were special for you that you gave as a gift as opposed to took yourself?
Probably the one that will always come to mind for me is, in my family, we grew up big sports fans, and we my dad coached our basketball team, and we would play. We'd wait for him to get home from work, and then we would play basketball in the driveway together. We'd watch. I grew up in Denver, so 1980s Denver Nuggets basketball teams playing, and through Spur, we ended up getting Denver Nuggets tickets to the game where they won the championship a couple years ago. But we took my dad, and it was this full circle moment for us where he had, introduced us to basketball so many years before, and my brother and I are there with my dad, celebrating the championship. So that's just across all gift giving. We did get it off Spur because we do have that ticketing integration, but that's something I'll never forget.
No, that's really cool. That's special. And that to me ultimately is like whenever someone, I started this podcast with my dad, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. One of the things that most of our listeners know is that, in losing my dad, one of the things that came about was this show. And it's obviously, it's part of, in some ways I see it's, the gift that he gave to me during that time was the fact that it created this opportunity. But the reason I highlight that is more that during that time, what we reflected on was the trips that we took, the shared memories that we had, because we were living in LA at the time, and he had done this trip to visit us. And we had gone to go and visit this restaurant that was featured in a TV show that he was really keen. And we got the right table on the right evening. And like, it was one of those weeks where like everything just worked out really well. And we had so many highlights from that week, and we reflected on that. And so for me, what I'm sharing there for all of our listeners in this year that I've coined the transformative travel year in 2026, and a big reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you, Cody, is that I think that when we think about longevity, and we think about legacy, and we think about that savoring all the time that we have, not making holidays just 1 week a year that you look forward to. You mentioned something really interesting. You mentioned quite a few interesting things on our discussion, but one in particular was when you highlighted the fact that it's almost like your happiness quotient goes up as soon as you have a trip planned. You're instantly living in that moment that you're looking forward to, because there's an element of like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait for that trip. But rather than living in suspense, the idea that you have something to look forward to each week, each month, like whether it's an experience you take in your hometown or you have a weekend getaway. And so for me, I think that giving the gift of experiences is what people should be prioritizing. I'm excited where you've gotten to with this business. So on that note, Cody, let's make sure all of our listeners know where to find out more information about Spur Experiences. I know I mentioned the website, but what would be some of the best ways for partners or for potential customers to engage with you and the team?
Yeah, everything really driven through our website. So that's just, again, spurexperiences.com. So that's Spur, like spur of the moment, spurexperiences.com. And we do quite a bit on Instagram, but TikTok's actually our biggest channel. So I think it's spur.experiences. You'll find us on TikTok, really posting a lot of content of people going on these experiences, so you can see a really good preview of what might interest you. So yeah, always open to new partners, whether it be new experience partners that we can sell through our site, or just kind of distribution partners as well. Wide open to it, and looking forward to what this year has to bring.
Terrific. Yeah, I don't follow you guys on TikTok yet, so I will do that, because I think a short form video and getting a sense of the actual experience is so valuable. But no, I really appreciate the conversation we've had, Cody. I certainly wish you and the team every success in 2026 and beyond. I look forward to keeping in touch. But thanks again for joining us, for being a part of this Spotlight episode. And I look forward to seeing you at some point over the course of the year.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's been an absolute joy talking to you today, and I'm glad that we connected.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Cody Sudmeier, the founder and CEO of Spur Experiences. Thanks again, Cody, for joining us and sharing your perspectives on where gifting and transformational travel are headed in 2026 and beyond. And thanks again to everyone for listening and spending this time with us. If today's conversation sparked some ideas for you about how you can plan to travel, celebrate, or gift differently, be sure to check out spurexperiences.com to learn more about what Cody and his team are building. You can also find additional highlights, clips, and insights from this episode across all our social channels, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So make sure you're following along there. And don't forget to check out more Travel Trends Spotlight episodes on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anytime at traveltrendspodcast.com/spotlights. Thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you being part of our community. Until next time, safe travels.